partidei. Delgado acolo este, va fi corner, dragi ascultători.
And we're going.
It's going to take a lot to drag me away from you. There's nothing that 100 men or more could ever do. I bless the rains down in Africa. It's going to take some time to do the things we never had. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Welcome back to Verde Broadcasting. I'm Duncan Casey, and this is Duncan Rule, everyone.
Hello.
Duncan from R Branch is joining me today to talk about the classic film. It's almost Citizen Kane-esque in its reverence, or general global reverence. Martin Scorsese's 1917 Mr. Black Taxi Driver.
Six,
thank you. So off to a good start. It's amazing.
It's great.
Yeah, this was something you suggested.
Yeah, I did suggest this.
Yeah.
It is, as
So
I
it's
said
all
to you
on you,
earlier.
mate.
It's on me. It's on me.
Yeah, yeah.
It is. I'd say it's pretty much my.
Sorry. Where's your mic?
Oh, was it not? Might have stuck it on wrong.
Oh, stuck it in my arse. Covered up the base. Don't be disorderly.
God, that just gave me a horrible flashback.
Yeah. Pottery. Fucking pottery, mate.
Pottery. Right, we're starting again.
You're right.
Yeah, we're still rolling.
So you're right to pave over that with a. Is it?
I'll put a clip.
All right, cool.
Oh, where are we starting?
So this was your idea, wasn't it? This was your recommendation.
Yeah. So I picked this. I mean, this film, it's an obvious choice in some ways, and as Richard said, it's very film studies, but it probably is one of my favourite films of all time. I'd put it up there as like a
Next week, Blade Runner.
a joint favourite. Yeah. But I think it's an interesting film to talk about.
Yeah.
I actually, although it has this reputation, I actually sort of put off watching it for quite a long time. I remember when I was a teenager and sort of really getting into film, a mate of mine had it on VHS and he was like, "Oh, you need to watch this," and I thought, Taxi Driver, what the hell's that?
I was the same, exactly. the
Sounds
same.
boring, forget
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
And then
same.
later on, I it's one of those things where it's always more fun when you you discover something yourself.
Yeah.
So I came into it then, and then just really loved the movie.
Same. I came to it in my 20s, and it was a film. It was one of those films, like you said, everyone talks about it, everyone says how great it is, and I had a tendency to not out of a sort of contrarianism, but more out of like whenever someone would say that to me and I would watch it, I'd be disappointed. I had that with Gladiator. That was my real experience with Gladiator. It was this like hyped movie, and then when I finally put it on, expecting some sort of amazing visual tour de force, I was kind of like, eh. I mean, swords and sandals, don't get me wrong, aren't my thing, but it was also I just like, eh. But with this, coming to it kind of from my dad bought me a Deniro box set, and that was one of them, and I was like, okay, I've got to watch Taxi Driver. And really, it's amazing. It's a fantastic film.
Yeah, I mean, my favourite era in cinema is the 70s. Like, because something about 70s movies I really like. I don't know, they're always kind of a bit grimy and a bit scuzzy.
It's the New York 70s
Exactly,
kind of,
and this-
get over there, over here.
Exactly, yeah. And Taxi Drivers.
Fuck your mother. We have a particular line in 70s New York nostalgia.
Yeah. But I think Taxi Driver is one of the sort of prime examples of that, and it just really, that aesthetic just works so well for the movie, and it's just something I just totally fell in love with. Everything about it, the score, the visuals of it, the plot, everything. The fact that Travis Bickle, the main character, is essentially the villain of the piece in a way. He's not a likable guy at all.
No,
but he's the one that we're stuck with. And it's just all of those kind of elements. I just really fell in love with the movie.
It's hard for us to speak about it in terms of its context because obviously we weren't around when it came out. But it occurs to me anyway that in all likelihood, firstly, it's quite a daring move for someone like Deniro to go into when he's sort of on the up in his career, still in his indie phase, but he's kind of on the up. To take a role that's not anti-hero, but it's like it's a film about where the protagonist is the villain.
He's a problematic guy.
And so to take that on, and then it's daring just as a film to be like, because it kind of at the end of it kind of goes, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I know he saves Iris and everything, but it's almost like being hailed as a hero at the end is completely by accident. It's not like he did good and then therefore became a hero.
It was never his intention, was it? And,
no.
After that whole scene, he attempts to kill himself and fails.
Yeah.
And then kind of ends up getting hailed as this hero, and then
Yeah.
I mean the very last shot in the movie is him kind of glancing into his mirror, and there's just this flash of something in his eyes that's like, is he gonna go back and kind of repeat history, going to repeat itself? So
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so yeah, from that point of view, it's really interesting. I think you were talking about contextually. Obviously, there's a post-Vietnam element to this.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a vet. That's established right at the beginning of the film.
It's a proto-Rambo type story in
Almost,
a way.
yeah.
Yeah. It's in the book, not the film, because obviously in the book he's the villain.
Yeah.
He's not. Yeah. No. Yeah. Absolutely. And in terms of there's politics and there's sort of street life and how they're kind of juxtaposed in it. Like what's the candidate's name?
Charles Palantine.
That's it. And he gets in the cab at one point and
Yeah.
he's lit. And it's there's a lot of the visual composition of it is very telling. Hence why we've got our red background going on, because we thought that was kind of
that's the predominant for the nighttime scenes. It's the predominant vibe of this movie,
which I guess is supposed to be kind of brothel-like.
It is. I mean, that's another.
Hell-like.
That's the thing about this. I mean, it's New York's kind of, I guess, infamous for that point in time was a very dodgy place, wasn't it? And that's, I think that's something this movie captures really well. Most of the time, Travis is driving around at night, and you see all this stuff going on just out of his windows as he's driving past.
And
there's parts in it where you think like there's a shot at one point of this guy walking down the street just ranting how he's going to kill somebody,
right.
and this guy's credited at the end, so presumably was an actor. But when you watch it, it looks like a local nutter that they've just filmed, just filmed on the street, kind of.
Because I mean it's a lot. So it's told from his perspective. But it's unclear as to what really is real and what isn't, in a way. I mean, I do believe that we are supposed to be seeing reality, but it's like, I suppose it starts off by saying if you were a single man who'd isolated himself essentially, and that was your kind of cesspit that you were stuck in, that you would foster these kind of ideas, and that New York is this real like hellish, just full of vice and scumminess and. Because I can't remember the name of the western that it's influenced by, but there's a western, isn't there? That's
I'm not sure.
Something like Jake and the Lads or whatever, with John Wayne, I think. But it's about the taxi is kind of his horse, and he's all dressed. Is it even Call the Cowboy by?
He wears cowboy boots. One of the other drivers at the sort of diner they meet at calls him.
As does what's his name? Sorry.
Oh, Harvey Keitel, doesn't it? When he meets him outside, And there's
some interesting, like there's one sequence of shots that, again, this is a film where you can get really wanky about it, or you can not, and that's the good thing about it. I think is it doesn't require you to be in depth with it. You can still enjoy it on another level, which is what Bickle is in himself. He's someone who doesn't understand himself fundamentally, so therefore he has all these sort of outpourings of stuff, but it's the projection. It's not. It's not.
And he frequently lies about himself during the course of the movie. There's a scene where he writes his parents a card, and it's just complete bollocks.
Well, he speaks in that. Yeah, like all his diary entries are all just sort of not platitudes, but they're just sort of almost sound bites that he said, like a politician would accept.
Yeah, and kind of weirdly wordy. Like when he goes on his first date with Betsy, Sybil Shepherd's character, in this little cafe, and he starts talking about how he didn't feel like he could go up to her unless he felt. It's just a very odd sort of speech that he gives to her, which he just kind of seems to take in a stride. But it's a very
it puts
weird
you
way.
on edge,
Like no one would ever speak like that in reality, So it's kind of
there's a sequence of shots, and I can't remember where it occurs in the film. It might be towards the start, but it's like you get all the shots of the taxi, and it's like the front grille in profile going along with all the shots behind it, like it's eating it. And then it cuts to bits of the taxi as if it's going through it, and then there's a shot out the back window of just like the street going away. And it was almost like, are we saying that? I suppose that this is it all being filtered through and sort of shat out. You know what I mean? Like of Bickle effect. I don't know. It's that may be me getting way too deep.
I know what you mean. I mean, a lot of the film is Travis driving around, and we're seeing everything kind of from the interior of his cab, aren't we? As it kind of passes by, and that's the basis for a lot of it.
He sort of watches from it as well, doesn't he? He's shown sort of watching.
Yeah, or in his mirror a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like there's the scene with Scorsese himself, where he's his passenger in the back, and he's just watching him in the mirror while he goes off on this incredibly disturbing rant about killing his wife.
It's almost like when people, that's his bubble, that's his echo chamber essentially that he experiences the world from, And then once people enter it and leave it, they're often not the same for one reason. It's almost like they've been chewed up and spat out a different, even Palatine, you know, pick your vowel, or consonant even, sorry. Even he's sort of, even though he doesn't realise it, he's now a target, effectively. And it's sort of like, there's lots of, there's the classic, there's the shot of, it's not Keitel's, is it Keitel's character? Whichever one it is that shot, Palatine's shown as his head, and it's very much like he gives a politician's response, and he uses his charisma on him, whereas it's the pimp, isn't it, I think, who grabs Jodie Foster out of the car, and you just see his torso.
You just see his arm come in or something like that, and he throws the $20 bill in.
That's right.
So you just see that part of him at that point, yeah.
And it's a study of someone it is that thing when you have only yourself as counsel. This is this sort of metastasizing tumor that he is. It's sort of, because there's a bit where he kicks his TV over, doesn't he? Because he's just stopped listening. It's like there's literally nothing from the outside world coming in, and so it's kind of like, and I guess that's where the "you talking to me" stuff comes in, even though I don't think people who quote that know how significant it is, but it's kind of like he's talking to himself, and it's it's like
that "you talking to me" thing. I mean, it's the thing that everybody knows. I always feel like there's a bit too much placed on that.
I mean, I suppose it's significant.
It's an iconic scene for sure. But I feel like a lot of people that's all they know. It's like, are you talking to me? Yeah.
But I think they don't get the point is that he's talking to himself in the mirror, and it's like, well, I'm the only one here, and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, because, and that's the problem. It's like that. It's a pivotal scene in a lot of ways, but kind of I don't think people really delve into it that deeply. But what do you think of Deniro's sort of performance in it and everything?
Well, I mean, it is a fantastic performance. Like, it's difficult to talk about, because it's just such an iconic part. I mean, I think the character's totally believable, and everything he does, and you just see him gradually unraveling as the film goes on, and that's it's in a lot down to Deniro's performance, and I think it's interesting in the way he's able to sort of, like, going back to the thing about him constantly lying to people, is he's able to kind of present these different fronts depending on who it is he's interacting with at the time. So I don't know. I mean, how do you feel about it as an actor?
Well, there's a tendency, obviously what's it's spoken about in terms of the method, that's what is often referred to with his performance, and he's someone who I think he's slightly misunderstood as an actor. I think in a lot of ways, like De Niro is an incredibly charismatic, talented human being, and from the very third-hand information I've had, people who've worked with him on stuff, just said he's a really lovely guy and he's really down to earth, but he has this kind of reputation as being this deadly serious, like, has to go and live it for reals guy. And it's like, I know he did drive a cab and stuff in preparation for it, and all that kind of thing, but at the same time, he's not going out and having a daughter and then getting her married to someone with a silly name and having a cat that knows how to use the toilet just so he can know what it's like to be the guy from Meet the Fockers or whatever. It's like, come on. And I don't believe that. I do think the whole thing about the method is, or any method, and we all have methods. I mean, that's the thing people don't understand. Even if your method is to wing it on the day, you still have a method, because if you didn't, you'd just fall over and hit your head. So it's, you do actually have to be methodical about how you approach it, even if it's just making sure you hit your marks and remember your lines. But I think I think the thing about Travis Bickle that keeps him from being purely evil or like a villain is that at the kernel of him, I think there's something immensely relatable for most men. And probably a lot of women as well. But there's that isolational thing of, like, how quickly an idea in your head can be corrupted if it's not kept in check by being able to bounce it off other human beings and having that counsel around you that I just, a lot of men idolise the idea of, like, I'll just sit around with my hands in my pants and drinking beer all day and, like, fucking the Jackson approach, whatever. I'm not knocking it, but and I do as well. But then I've had periods where I've been single and I've not really, and I lived on my own, and and it's like, you do very quickly start to sort of
it's kind of retreat into like your own little world, and that's, I mean that's the isolation is kind of the main theme of this movie, really, isn't it? So
yeah, and then but what else can we talk about? The women, what am I talking about? Representation of women in it. So obviously Scorsese actually is quoted as saying that he thinks it's a feminist movie in ways.
Right.
Obviously you've got Sybil Shepherd and Jodie Foster are the two sort of main kind of female interactions that he has.
Yeah.
One, she's Sybil Shepherd's showing quite angelic at the start anyway.
Yeah, when you see her
She's
the
like,
first time, she's like slow motion, she's like kind of wafting down the street, all white, isn't it?
Which again is showing us that it is through his lens. It's not through a purely objective lens. It is his how he sees it. Because obviously as time goes on, she becomes more and more kind of I don't know. I suppose she just starts wearing darker and darker clothing, and kind of he's not really into her as much, and so I guess. And then by the end, she's all like made up and looking great. But again, through his rearview mirror. Do you think that's a dream sequence at the end, or no?
I don't know. I mean, I don't really read any of the movie as being like that. But I mean, it could be. It's a weird coincidence to happen at that point in time.
Yeah.
So it could be because he's talking to the other drivers, and then they're like, "Oh, you've got a fare," and he goes over, and she's already in the back of the cab waiting for him. So. It could be. I don't know.
The whole thing could be a dream. I mean, the fact that his hair's back to normal, he's he's showing no signs of having been shot, or it's like you don't see any damage to him or anything like that. And it's kind of like I wonder if maybe he imagined,
maybe it finished at the end of that shootout in the sort of brothel. Yeah,
who knows? But maybe he's driving his cab in heaven. Hell, I don't know. But and then obviously the Jodie Foster character is an interesting one. Did it launch Jodie Foster? I would argue that Silence of the Lambs is what really launched Jodie Foster.
I mean, I guess it was kind of anecdotally, it was her kind of breakthrough role, wasn't it? I mean, it's a very odd thing as a 12-year-old,
right?
To kind of come through doing, I guess, but.
It's in that mould of like Exorcist and stuff where you're casting younger. I mean, again, it's about showing she's the corrupt, she's the innocence lost character, and the sort of quote unquote innocence found character is Sybil Shepherd, even though that age wise they're completely the wrong way around.
I heard apparently Scorsese himself had a lot of was quite uncomfortable actually directing her in some of the scenes, because obviously as her role as a prostitute, so she took a lot of her direction from Deniro. He kind of coached her basically. And
That's right. Now go over there and turn some tricks. And I hope you did your research. Fuck, all right, man. No, I mean, you better get out there, get in the phone book or something, because... but yeah, because there's how they both handle him. So, when he's sort of driving by and leering and stuff, and Sybil Shepherd sends the guy out with the umbrella to say, "Hey, why don't you move off?" But she uses the kind of political approach. She sends an envoy essentially, whereas Jodie Foster grabs that guy's arm at one point and walks off with him. And
she's with another girl, and they kind of just grab hold of two guys at the end of the street and walk off.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting about how the two, and there is that element of the political versus the kind of criminal, and what's I suppose good about it is that it kind of leaves it up to you, I think, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I kind of feel like by the end of it you go, fuck, and in some ways there, but for the grace of God go I. I mean, in that that could happen, not that it could happen to anyone, but that is the kind of thing where you kind of go, he was just some taxi driver, whatever that means, but it's like.
You kind of forget by the end of the film also that ultimately when he does finally go out and kill, it's these pimps and the guy that sort of runs the sort of apartment building where they're going and stuff like that, and that's who he ends up killing. But prior to that, he was trying to kill Palantine, and it's only because they spotted him in the crowd reaching into his jacket or whatever that doesn't actually happen, and it kind of takes this whole other turn. If that plan had gone to fruition, it would be a completely different ending to the movie. So,
and of course he sort of in his second persona, it's like an Indian, right? Because he has a mohawk. And
so apparently it's like a sort of tradition in the Marines to do that when you're going into battle, and it harks back to Native Americans because he's meant to be a Marines vet, I think. So that's kind of where it's supposed to be from. But
I see. Okay, cool. Yeah. What do you think? I mean, it does one thing that always, and I guess it's just a product of our age, but and when we were born, but it's like there are echoes in Travis Bickle of Rorschach from Watchmen. They seem very similar characters in terms of their approach to everything. You know what I mean? Like
I'm not familiar with.
You're not familiar with Watchmen?
Sorry.
Okay.
I'm not a comic book guy.
The comic book. Okay, fair enough. Richard.
Yes, no, you are.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So there are. I think there's similarity because they're both people within a monologues that are about scum and stuff on the streets and prostitutes and brothels and hating and lamenting the kind of. I mean, again, if we wanted to extrapolate it all out, it could almost be a resentment of liberalism in a way, but it's
debatably objectivist.
Yeah. Right. There you go. So it's debatably objectionist, is what Richard said. But yeah, no, and so there's clear. I mean, I would have thought that's quite it was what influenced that in some ways. I'm trying to think what else to say about it.
Could we talk about the soundtrack for a minute?
Absolutely.
I think that's the soundtrack to this is one of my favourite. I know it's lame to say because it's one of my favourite movies, one of my favourite scores. But I think this was Bernard Herrmann's last score that he did, and he died basically right after he finished it.
I think he literally died the last day.
Yeah, he saw a rough cut of the next film he was going to be scoring, and then died that night or something.
Wow. Yeah.
But I just think it's such a brilliant soundtrack, and it perfectly kind of mirrors the visuals of the film and the character, because it alternates between these really almost like jazzy, quite relaxed, upbeat things where he's just kind of cruising around versus these really, really dark moments, and it's just a fantastic piece.
It's almost got that corrupted jazz, because when you think of New York, there is that kind of jazz element to it's quite often played, but it's got that kind of slightly skewed, bastardized.
Yeah, it kind of goes from that nice sort of chilled jazz stuff down to kind of this real low strings and stuff like that.
It's the
the darker part.
Snare drum motif as well.
And
it's that's almost military, but almost heartbeat like, but like speeding up, and it's kind of like rage bubbling and that kind of thing. It's really great. Didn't Scorsese, when he first heard it, was a bit like taken aback by it because he wasn't expecting that at all.
Oh, was it?
Apparently.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it works perfect. That's another example of something like not having too much control over your movie. I think it's one of those things of just letting it go, and it's all credit to Scorsese that he was like, yep. Like, he didn't go, no, I want like elephant noises or whatever. It was like, he was kind of like,
I think it really helps to make the movie the soundtrack. Yeah. It would not be the same film without it, for sure.
Like Jaws, I mean, these things never. I really truly believe the scores are a good 50% of the scores are kind of the emotional heart of the film. Don't get me wrong, as an actor, I believe that performance is as well, but the score's if a well-written score is about, because all editing, all filmmaking is about rhythm.
Yeah,
it's all about building you up to something and then coming down again and all that kind of thing, and it's all like this. And score has to be a part of that. It's a major part of that, getting you into.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in whether it's the score, the music, or the actual sound design or whatever. It's a really basic example. Any horror movie is kind of a lot of the time made by the audio design.
Yeah.
In terms of generating that kind of fear and stuff, and it applies to music as well. I think music is such a kind of emotive medium, isn't it? And it really helps to.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's always that handoff between sound design and score, diegetic, non-diegetic. I mean, there's and editing as well, and it's kind of like the relationship between a bass player and a drum, the drum player in a band. It's like those two things. One's on the sort of tonal side, if you like, one's on the rhythmic side, but they both have almost the same job to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's something like there's loads of examples of it, and for some reason the only one that's jumping into my head right now is one of the fight scenes in Dark Knight Rises, of all things to pick. But the fight scene with Bane and Batman, or the first one, there's no score, but it's sort of punctuated by the punches of the score, essentially. So the bang, bang, bang. It's almost like that's the score. I'm sure there are better examples.
Sometimes an absence of music is just can.
But it's almost like there is a score anyway. It's just, and again, is that there, or is that here, you know,
Right,
or is it
yeah.
in the city, or you know, and so yeah, I mean, the example of that. So, and I can't remember if Taxi Driver plays with the whole idea of. Is it ever shown at any point for that music to actually be like on his radio or anything in the cab? I can't remember.
The only music that kind of is in, you know, in his world is like, there's a point where I think it's where he's watching the telly and he kicks it over. He's kind of watching some program just like people dancing, and stuff like that. And that is what I think. Everything else
I
want to say is
non-digest.
yeah,
Okay.
or
Okay.
like, you know, there's this drummer on the street and stuff like that. But
Right. Yeah, so it's the rhythm of the world. If that's a wanky thing to say, isn't it? Because there's rhythm in the way he like gets his gun out of his. He sort of sets up all the gun.
yeah, he cuts like part of a slider from a drawer. And
Yeah. And again, it works. That's the thing. Is it? And so that again, and we've this is a sort of constant theme when we talk about movies, but it's like if you're telling it from the perspective of the protagonist, it's little things like that. The fact that just works. Or does it fuck up? I can't remember. I don't think it does. I think it always works. It certainly works when he tries it.
It does work when he tries it.
So it's kind of like if it's his recounting of a story or it's his telling of a story, then it's like all the things he thinks of work.
Yeah, and he does use it as well. At the
Yeah.
end where he kills those guys. And you see him sort of shoot it out of his jacket. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's a good button to end on, I suppose. But yeah, good shout. Good shout.
Yeah.
On
I feel like it's one of these movies there's a lot to say about it, but sometimes it's like difficult to know what to say about it because it's so iconic, you know. But
absolutely, and
hopefully we covered.
It's hard to know which thread to pick at and unpack because it's, as you say, it's a very dense cake of slice of New York circa 1976 cake. Cool. Well, thank you very much for coming along and discussing Taxi Driver. Thank you all for watching. Are you looking at me? Oh no, talking to me. Fuck, I fucked it up. Anyway, that's just another example of the ramshackle way we approach things here at Verde Broadcasting. Speaking of which, please like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. Interact below. Please share. That really helps us out as well, actually. And we are on the Twitch. We are on the Patreon. We are on the Redbubble. We have Amazon affiliates. We have all the stuff that you're bored of hearing about down below in the description. Please go ahead. If you're going to buy anything on Amazon, do it through our shop because it just helps us out. Brilliant stuff. Thank you so much for coming along, and we will see you again next time with Mr. Black.
Support your 7th or 8th favourite YouTube channel by buying crap, tat, junk, hogwash and filth at redbubble.com/people/Valverde shop.